Hi, good evening. Welcome to Barmy Army Isolation Podcast number 17. I know, I said I won't be here this week, but Mark's taken pity on me because for once, we've actually got stuff to talk about. Probably got too much, so we might hold stuff over to next week. I'm absolutely thrilled this evening to be joined by Fiona. We've got stuff, Fiona!
Finally.
How are you doing?
Yeah, not too bad. Excited to talk about football stuff.
Yeah, feels really positive this week, I feel. Craney, how are you doing? How's everything going for you at the moment?
Yeah, I'm good, thanks. How are you?
Yeah, good, thank you. So I'm just going to jump straight into it. It's been the busiest week we've had at the club probably since COVID locked us down. I think it's safe to say. And when I talk about week, I'm saying from the back end of last week, a back end of last podcast up until this. Girls are back in training, and that's probably triggered some announcements and some changes. The first one, we're going to talk about a couple of departures, one to the playing staff, one to the support staff. And in honour of Shiv going, I'm wearing the shirt tonight. I'm not putting the gloves on, but they are honest. They're there. A surprise to see her go. Expected, not yet. Fiona, what did you make of what felt like a very sudden announcement very early this morning?
Yeah, it was a surprise that it was quite early on today. I don't even necessarily surprised because there was question marks when she's coming back from her pregnancy. Would she stay or would she go? Mary's our solid number one. It'd be good for her. Shiv could have challenged her, but also I don't think Shiv's got that long left playing wise, so she might want to go somewhere where she's almost guaranteed game time. And Casey does say in her statement that she wants to give youth a chance. I think having Shiv around has been good because she has lots of experience, not necessarily just playing experience. She's been to a lot of tournaments, been on the bench, played or whatever. And definitely, hopefully, pass that on to Rambo and Bentley. So yeah, kind of sad because obviously she's part of the original squad, but also I'm not crying over it. These things happen.
Yeah, and also for me, one of the things I really valued about Shiv off the pitch was just how much she seemed to really appreciate the fans' support. Just before I come to you, Craney, Dave, Ellen, Murrayman, good to see you this evening. Craney, what were your thoughts on the announcement this morning?
Well, obviously, like you guys touched on, obviously it was an early one, so that bit caught me by surprise. I don't know. I think for me, obviously, when we found out she was expecting, I think that was when we were landing in Oslo.
We actually landed. I remember I turned my phone on and I went, well, that's why we've got to get a brand new key because we were sat close to one another, weren't we?
Yeah,
and
it
was like, oh,
shutting the plane down.
Yeah. That was the first thing we knew about it.
Yeah, I think from then on, it was kind of, I don't know, I had in my mind that she maybe wouldn't come back. And then obviously she kind of, obviously we'd seen pictures of her kind of working out and building up to coming back. And then yesterday, obviously something, I was looking at the training pictures, as you mentioned, and obviously she wasn't there, which got me kind of wondering. I was like, maybe I'm just putting it down to not fully fit. But yeah, I think I would say surprised, to be honest. I mean, it was something where I thought, if she did another year, see how it goes. Also, help the younger ones through and then kind of assess from there, really.
Yeah, I think we expected if she stayed, she'd perhaps go more towards the support team. Weren't necessarily expecting that she would leave altogether. I know there'd been the announcement not long ago about her joining #United, but as an ambassador. But safe to say we didn't really anticipate her being our first choice going into the new season. Would you both say that?
Yeah, I'd say that was fair, yeah.
Okay. Good evening, Torrin. Let's move on from Shiv, like I say, just because there's so much to get through. So we've lost a member of the playing staff. They've moved on. We've now also had a retirement. We've been going long enough to get somebody retiring. Glenn, the Casey's number 2, who came in at a difficult time for Casey and was in the role probably longer than a lot of people expected. He's now retired, and in his place, well, and before we move on straight away, he came in, he did a job, and as Casey admits, she needed somebody she could rely on, somebody she could trust in, and he came in and did that job. Craney, I'm throwing this one over to you. Glenn's replacement, Martin Ho. Tell us what you know about him, please.
Okay, so if I start right at the beginning, Martin was somebody I came across at Everton. Long story short, basically I used to work with one of the Everton players who is actually still there now. So obviously used to go there to support her. And then kind of just grew from there, really. Just, like as you do after games, chat to, players or coaches, just have a look, kind of, obviously that's was my line of work. So coming across people through like, interviews and things. And I think what's great about this for me is he works, or has worked really well with younger players. And I think throughout his time, obviously at Everton, they were really successful when he was there. Cup finals, talking top 4 of the league. They then had a slight wobble and went down to WSL2. Obviously, again, completely changed the setup. They brought through a lot of academy players, Gabby George, for example, people that he kind of developed and brought through with Andy Spence. After that, obviously, he'd been at a couple of academy sides. I know, although it pains me to say, Liverpool's academy side was actually very successful under his leadership, league and cup double. But again, I think for me, it just comes down to what he offers as a coach. And I think for me, I know I found out it was with our reserves in February, something Nat and David mentioned. And I think I was happy then that he was, he was getting a really good, high quality coach that's kind of been in the women's game for at least 5 or 6 years. And I think for me, now that he stepped up to replace Glenn, I think it's only a good thing going forward. And hopefully he's got some really good ideas to kind of, take us to that next level alongside Casey.
He seems to come with a big reputation. And like you say, he's worked with a lot of younger players, and he's been working with the dev squad for some time. So whether that smooths the transition for some of our dev squad to come through to the first team. I know there's a lot of talk about some of our devs and having had the fortune to see them play a few times last season, not as much as some, but there is potential there. And if he can help with that path, and I always think as a fan, when you've seen a player come through from the youth teams, I know we talk about one of the aspects of the United way, but you look at the men's team and somebody like Marcus Rashford will always get a little bit more leeway because he's one of our own, if you will. So I think as fans, for us, we love to see players come through, and we love to see someone who can develop that way. Do you think he's capable of doing that?
I'd say definitely 100%. I mean, like I say, from what I've kind of seen and heard and experienced, so to speak, I think, safe hands in terms, I think it has been mentioned he may still have some involvement with the devs, but I think in terms of making that transition, sometimes we do see, don't we, the devs train with the first team. And I think, one, obviously he'll be able to recommend, who's, training well, who's got the potential, and kind of just take these players to the next level. I think obviously the gap in between development and first team can be difficult if you haven't had that experience. I know obviously we took a few, didn't we, to Norway. So again,
more out of necessity, I think. We were down to the bare bones of the squad. We'd just come back off the World Cup. So going out to Oslo was more out of necessity, it felt. Fiona, I just want to come in. Are there elements of Martin coming in as number 2 that you're looking forward to beyond just development of the players? I'm thinking more tactically. I'm thinking more about challenging Casey to look at the game differently.
Well, I think it's good that he's had that experience with the under-21s for us, the devs. And it's probably been a bit like an audition. Casey could have seen how he's been going, how he's been dealing with them and that kind of thing, and must have been impressed to offer him the role. I think, it'd be good for somebody to challenge Casey. Casey's obviously the boss, and what she says goes, but you have to be open to challenge, whether it's what formation you're going for, how training's going, those kind of things. And I think it'd also be good. Casey likes to control everything. but that's a lot for her to do. So hopefully he can take away some of the burden, whether that be he's scouting some of the future transfers, watching like some videos from previous games where to work on. Any little thing that will help Casey. And as Matt has said, he's got lots of experience in the game. So he will have seen a lot of players. So hopefully he can pass on some knowledge.
Yeah. Craney, I'm just going to come back to you. I can hear you clacking away on your keyboard there, doing some research, I'm sure. If you were given, and you might not be able to answer this one straight away. If we'd have said to you, knowing what you know about certain people, and granted, you don't know all of the football world, foreign, domestic, but you know certain people, then obviously you're aware of this guy. Knowing him as you do, and if I'd have said to you at the back end of last season, right, Glenn's going to retire, who do you want in as number 2? Where in your list, if you had to choose your top 10 or top 5, how high up would he have been on that list?
Do you know what? I'm going to be truthful. He was actually second choice on my list, surprisingly enough. It's quite funny, actually. I think it was the end of last season. I had a chat with Natalie, because at the time it was mentioned Glenn was obviously covering until a replacement was found. So I assumed the end of, the season. And I think I'd actually said Andy Spence, who was obviously number 1 at Everton, that had also worked with Martin. It just so happened that Andy got the England under-19 job last year. He's now assistant there. So obviously we saw Andy in Scotland last year at the Euros. It just so happened that Martin, had then gone at the time to Liverpool. And I said to Natalie, I said, right, so if we don't get Andy Spence, I said, we should be looking at his assistant. Because like I said, for me, I mean, you could go through squads that he's kind of coached and worked with now. And I'm pretty sure the majority are, WSL based, including academy players. There's quite a few now. Like I say, likes of Gabby George, etc., that have come through. And obviously, I could be here all night listing, a load of different players. But I think for me, he was up there, sort of towards the top of my list, looking at who was available at the time. Of course, obviously, as well, the big thing, like Fiona said, who's going to work with Casey, not necessarily going to agree, but does have a vast amount of experience to kind of say, well, actually, let's look at it from this point of view. So, yeah.
Okay, that's good to know. So one of the things we've looked at and we've talked about as fans at games, and also in a WhatsApp group we've got, is somebody to push Casey, somebody to challenge her. So fingers crossed we've got that all lined up. Once that announcement was made, and this is before any new signings, and we'll come on to them shortly, because if nothing else, Jake's watching us tonight. So, Jake, we did want you joining us. I know you're busy, but thank you for joining us. Nat, yes, it is the first time, and they are made to be worn. John, nice to see you. Once that announcement was made, did you immediately, even before any new signings, like I say, feel more confident about next season, Fiona?
I think so. I think Glenn obviously had lots of experience in the game, but sometimes you just need a bit of fresh air. In the staff, we all love Casey. We don't want her to be replaced, but we felt like something needed to change. We've had this discussion lots of times as a group of fans. Something needs to change, and hopefully he'll do that.
And Craney, I'm guessing, considering you had him up on as second on your list, once that announcement was confirmed, you were feeling confident already.
Yeah, I mean, similar to Fiona, I think just, the thought of, for me, is like, dare I say it, modern appointment. And I don't mean anything, against Glenn with that, but it's the fact of like, new ideas. The game has moved massively within those kind of 6 years. And I think just, can we now, I use the word unpredictable, and I've said it a lot of times, between discussions with us all, can we next year become unpredictable? Do we have a plan B? Can we get things from set pieces? Are we going to change the way we play? Are we going to change formation? I think, somebody like Martin coming in, will massively help. I think, obviously Casey's got her ideas, brilliant. And I think Martin will just, bring that extra to the table to complement what we have. So I think, like you said, before signings came in, I think for me, that was like, a brilliant replacement for Glenn.
So everything is positive at this point. And then we just start getting the icing on top of the cake, the cherry on top. In Jake's case, the sprinkles, the sparklers, the lot. First new player coming in, Lucy Staniforth. A player we had talked about amongst ourselves, and a player for who some weren't overly excited, but a solid player to come in and do a job. Craney, what were your thoughts when it was announced?
I mean, like you said, it was kind of mentioned between a few of us. I was actually surprised, to be fair. Just, I don't know, it was one of those that kind of, it was unexpected, but I'd say needed. I mean, again, Lucy's somebody I've seen over the past sort of 4 or 5 years, and I think the first thing that springs to mind is she offers something different. You know, I think you watch Lucy, and I don't think, if you look at, you know, goals, okay, she doesn't get many, but I think every goal I've seen, it's never been a tap-in. It's been something that's like literally what I call a rocket. She can hit a ball very well. I think in terms of her style of play, for me, it's like similar to Hayley Ladd. She's very good in a tackle, like not overly aggressive, but just the right balance. And I think having players like that, you know, can only benefit us. Not that we need to be, you know, massively aggressive, but I think, you know, just a real ball winner. And I think obviously she's more offensive, whereas Hayley obviously sits. And I think, yeah, kind of her range of passing and a long range shooting can only be of benefit, you know, if we need to kind of change up how we play.
John asked the question, where do you see her fitting in? Bearing in mind you're saying she's like Hayley, she's not going to displace Hayley Ladd. I wouldn't.
I think obviously when I say like Hayley, I mean in terms of like the tackling, you know, the aggression. You know, I think, again, let's be clear, she's obviously not a defensive midfielder. She is, you know, what I call an attacking midfielder. But I think she is willing to kind of, you know, drop back as well and get stuck in the tackles. In terms of fitting in, it's a difficult one, isn't it? Now we've got so many competition for places in that midfield. I think it's one of them where, like, you know, people kind of question, can Jackie and Katie play together? So whether that partnership is sacrificed and it's, you know, Lucy and Jackie or Lucy and Katie, I'd suggest, or I'd think that would probably be, you know, behind the manager's thinking with that one.
Okay, Fiona, what are your thoughts on Lucy Staniforth?
When we were talking about it before, like it was confirmed, I was definitely on the side of, do we need her? We've already got.
You were a bit underwhelmed.
Yeah, I think you can say that because in our midfield we've got Hayley, Katie, and Jackie, and like finding a replacement for them is going to be difficult because Hayley was great. How do you drop your captain? And then Jackie's our world class like signing kind of thing. It'd be good to provide them some competition for places, that kind of thing. But my thought was, oh, well, if we need a midfielder, maybe we'll look to the devs. But she's a good signing. You know, we got her on a free, so there's like don't need to worry too much about the money impacting like other positions. And if we have her, it means somebody else doesn't have her as well, I suppose.
Good point.
She isn't going to be. So a lot of people expected Jackie to provide lots of goals, and that hasn't happened. I don't look at Lucy as being a player who's going to provide lots of goals, but she'll create chances. She's an attacking midfielder who will be playing the ball to other people to score. Now, yeah, Matt said she scored some rockets. I think she scored 4 goals last season. That's for Birmingham. So maybe she will provide us some goals, but I don't think that's going to be her main role. So you know, if she hasn't scored by, I don't know, Christmas or whatever, I wouldn't be too concerned.
Yeah, John makes the point here, actually. Depends what Casey has promised Lucy to come to United. Has she been promised regular first team football? In which case, that question of where she fits in, who gets dropped for her, what happens to the formation? That's a whole nother question, and I know we've talked about that at times. But yeah, this is goals from midfield certainly is one area we could definitely improve in. Some would say goals from our forward players as well. But if we can get more goals from the midfield, that will take a bit of the pressure off the forwards as well. Gary makes a good point. Talk about strength and depth. If you want to challenge for the top 3, you need 2 quality players for every position. This is what you're saying, Fiona, about giving somebody competition, keeping them on their toes. We talked last year at times about Mary almost becoming complacent because where was the competition for her? And maybe now we've got a clear sense that actually Rambo's the one she's got to look out for. Rambo was out on loan at times last year. So that might help to keep Mary on her feet in the same way we're talking about the midfield, that at times, Katie and Jackie didn't seem to gel too well. They seemed to not so much get in each other's way, but they both looked almost better when the other one wasn't on the pitch. And then there's obviously 2 need to fit in somewhere potentially. So, maybe we're going to have a bit more squad rotation next season coming up.
Something we've asked for.
Sorry, was
something we've asked for, squad rotation.
Absolutely, strength and depth. And didn't Casey also say that when we had injuries, we were struggling? So she's acknowledged then that she wants a bigger squad. What's Jake saying to us here? You can see Lucy scoring about 5 next season. Hard to judge on her form last season. Had no solid team around her. It's worth saying that Jake is probably Lucy Staniford's biggest fan in the Barmy Army. Is it safe to say? I don't think we're going to try and compete with him for that title, are we?
He's already planning the flag, so
we're happy to let him take that one. Yeah. I'm actually really pleased for Jake because I know he was a big fan of Lizzie, and obviously Lizzie's moved on, so he's got a new favourite, along with Jane, of course. Hopefully, the similarities begin and end there. But he's also going to be ordering the tea towel for her. Craney, you'd be pleased to know he's taking care of that one. Good evening, Shane. Nice to have you join us. So that's the more well-known player that's come in, and certainly, John's saying Jake can definitely have the rights to being Lucy Stone's biggest fan, or the flag, or all of it. I don't know. We then have got 2 players who've come in with very little fanfare, in as much as we don't know a whole heap about them. 2 young foreign players, an absolute shift, it feels like, in policy from Casey. That's what's thrown me. Not the youth, but I always had this impression that Casey wanted British players. She wanted the homegrown talent. And if she couldn't get the right homegrown talent, she was prepared to bring them through from the devs. And yet then we end up with 2 players. We hadn't heard of either of them, right? Up until we started being linked with them. Is that fair to say?
Yeah, definitely.
So, Dave's just asked a quick question. Who's going to score more goals next season? 1-word answer from you both, Jackie or Lucy. Craney?
Lucy.
Fiona?
Lucy.
Okay, there you go, Dave. They're both saying Lucy. I'd probably agree. We all know who Jake would say. So I'm reliably informed that the correct pronunciation is Onabatia. Clearly, she's going to be called On a Battle. But I'm just going to put it out there that it's not battle. But I dare say, in the heat of the moment, when we're shouting, hopefully when we're at games, we can be shouting for the players behind masks if need be. Onabatia, not a lot that we knew about her. Spanish right back, played for the senior team, if I'm not mistaken. Craney, did you see her play at the youths? Is it, or was it not her you got to see? Have I got myself mixed up?
Last year? I think it was Navarro was there last year, even Navarro, and Claudia Pina, who I think has actually gone out on loan. So I know those were 2 that were linked with us, weren't they?
Even Navarro. There's a strange clause in Spain whereby if a player moves, is it under a certain age, if they move on to a Spanish club, they've got to pay this ridiculous fee, but they can leave the country and go and play for a foreign team and no money gets exchanged. Shane, absolutely. Pray for the stadium announcers saying Batia. It's battle. It is. Do you remember when Jackie did that announcement, or very early on, she did a video when someone said, "How do you pronounce your name?" And she came out with this wonderful Dutch pronunciation, and then said, "But everyone will call me Jackie Groenen." So,
it's going to happen.
Yeah, Shane's right, because the stadium announcer struggles with herps. I'm sure she ends up being called herps or something. Yeah, something strange. So maybe, John, you're right. The double L is a Y sound. Yeah, my Spanish-speaking mate informed me that. So we're going to try and get it right here, and then at games it'll just go out the window. So Eva Navarro is another one that we had been tipped with. There is a suggestion that she's going to be waiting until the end of this court case gets resolved because she wants to stay in Spain. Okay. So we may be having a conversation about Eva Navarro in a few weeks' time. Who knows? But Onabachi has come over with, like I say, not such a reputation that we know of anything. A right back. One of the positions you'd have recognised we needed strengthening in? Craney?
For me, no, not yet anyway. I think long term, yes, but I mean, it's difficult because I'm one of these where a lot of people, I mean, we don't know how true it is. A lot of people say, we've not much money to work with. Now, if this is the case for me, I think what people don't appreciate is, okay, people are signing for free, but you've got agent fees involved, you've got signing on fees, you've got bonuses in contracts, which, is fine. We've got 2 right backs currently, 2 different styled right backs. We've also had Amy Turner. Yes, she's not a right back, but, she was pretty, for me, she was the surprise of the season last year at right back. Now, my thinking behind the signing of Ona is that in the She Believes, she played left back. Now I'm looking at left backs and we've got one, which is Lotta. So my theory is, does Casey see Ona as, starting right back, or is she going to be challenging for left back? Because again, last year we had Martha, didn't we, at left back? So I think looking at it from, shall we say, a sensible point of view, I think Ona being able to play left back kind of in a way gives us cover there, 2 players. And also just something different at right back. I mean, having read things about her, there's a big kind of fanfare, everyone's really excited. But again, probably similar to you two, I've not seen much of her. A couple of games in the She Believes, and that's it, to be honest. But, we'll see. Obviously, the things I've read are she's a very pacey fullback, strong in a tackle. So I think for me, can't complain. She's come in. She's going to provide, again, what we talked about before, competition for places. It's somebody new, it's somebody young. So, let's see where it takes us, really.
Yeah, Fiona, what were your thoughts on what you might have seen so far, or just about the signing in general?
Yeah, so I hadn't really heard much about her, apart from that.
The Twitter campaign.
All of Twitter going mad for her. I've watched a few clips from her since then. So, for example, the She Believes, she plays left back against the USA, who then went and won the World Cup last summer. So, did a good job. I think she's a young talent as well, so maybe she won't be like our best right back this season, but she's something for the future as well. We've got her on a 2-year contract with an option for a third, so let's be realistic. It's a 3-year contract. So yeah, she's something definitely for the future. And as Matt said, she can play right back and left back. If we lose Kirsty Smith or Martha Harris, who've we got that she can cover them for both sides. I'm expecting one of them to potentially leave next summer. So we've already got that cover there. She's a very attacking fullback as well. So she looked reasonably quick on the clips I saw as well. So I hope to see her bombing down the right wing, maybe whipping a cross here or there. I see Amy Turner as being the more offensive right back. If we were playing like the likes of Chelsea or City, for example, but maybe like give Casey a season to mould on her into the kind of the right back she wants. But yeah, I'm very excited for the future. With that. Can't really say much else.
No, just before I come to a couple of points, Fiona, Shane's got a question for you.
I'm only on the one screen tonight because I'm out of the office. I had 5 on earlier on, so.
If anybody, I mean, Fiona has this setup. Was it 5 different? So you have three
two monitors, my laptop, and I also have my phone on occasionally when we're watching the Formula One and that kind of thing, and then potentially the tablet as well.
So anybody who may have had the joy of seeing Fiona during a Sunday social where there's Formula One on will have had the opportunity to see the multiple screens, and it's a sports watcher's dream. So I'm absolutely thrilled that the women's team have followed the men's team in adopting this option for everybody. Everybody gets an option. You don't see anybody signing for the men's team without an option for an additional year. So it starts introducing that to the women, the women's contracts. So yeah, theoretically, we're looking at a 3-year deal. With that in mind, and her age, and the fact that she's already acknowledged in her interview when she signed that it's a more physical game in this country than she's used to. Are we not expecting her to be a regular first teamer straight away? Is that fair to say, Fiona?
Yeah, I expect her to be playing, some of the cup games and the occasional WSL match, but I don't expect her to play every game this season. I would say, optimistically, I'd like her to see playing at least half games, but she's definitely needs some experience in the WSL. It is very different for the Spanish league. So hopefully Amy can pass on some of that knowledge as well.
Absolutely. And Casey's been learning Spanish, so that's covered because I don't think Oni's got a lot of English. Casey's been learning Spanish, and of course we all know somebody else who speaks it fluently. Craney, your thoughts on her not necessarily being first team, first choice in this next season?
Yeah, I think I'd agree with what's been said. I think obviously we just mentioned in the language, I think that's the first thing, as well as obviously, getting used to the standard, I think, off the pitch as well. You're in a new environment, a new country with very little English. And
a climate that is, I'm looking out the window now and it's grey and it's miserable. It's been chilly today for a mid-July day, so she's going to have to get used to that as well, she's admitted.
Yeah, definitely. I think, but it's one of those, obviously, it's like Lotta last year, she was thrown in at the deep end against City, which, it's not something that massively bothers me because I think, she's come over, she's going to need time to adapt. That said, I agree with you both. I think cup games, yes, maybe games against some of the lower league opposition in the league. We've got the likes of Villa we could try her out against. I mean, no disrespect to these clubs, but kind of she will need at some point, I think, a regular run of games. I think last year for me, that's what maybe held Lotta back, is that we saw glimpses of her. Then she was in, then she had a couple of good games, then she was out. And obviously, as it got towards the cancelling of the season, she was pretty much hitting form or looking, like what she was at the start of the year. So again, for owner, I think if we can gradually ease her in, but obviously with more games where it's possible to, throw her in, not so much at the deep end, we should look to do that.
So our Conti Cup group could be an interesting one because I think last season we only had one non-Super League team, and that would always be the fixture you'd look at and say, anybody we think we want to give a game to, that's one for them. And also in the FA Cup, we drew City again straight away. So we never had the opportunity to play. And I always thought that we'd have maybe had some of the devs coming into that game had we played a lower ranked team. So we never had that opportunity last year. Hopefully this season coming up, you look at that was a baptism of fire. It wasn't just against City, it was the Etihad. And if that's the very first game you get into play for your team, for your new team, that's a massive shock. And yeah, it wasn't the best game for her. She was pulled off after 45 minutes and she struggled to settle in. But the fixtures could fall slightly kinder. I know Mark's making the point that it depends on who the teams are. So there are some clubs we might sort of name some teams, we don't know how they're going to strengthen, that we'd be looking at in terms of who they would possibly be giving a game against them. So hopefully Honor gets a chance early, but she gets a decent run, and we have teams that we can feel confident putting her in against. So Dave's just asking, have the foreign players returned to training? Some have, I believe. Lotta, we believe, hasn't. She has to go into quarantine because Sweden's still on the list. Nobody's seen a picture of Jackie yet. But we believe that the new players have come straight in. I'm sure I've seen training pictures of them. So some have, some haven't. Okay. Sorry, Murray Man, the devs, the development squad. He's asking what the devs are. Yeah, the development squad, it's the under 21s, I think they are. So, yeah, when we talk about the devs, sorry, we do abbreviate that. And we're talking about two players here, the foreign newbies, who are both young enough to actually feature in an under 21 squad, obviously not the development squad. But we've then gone to another player who came completely out of the blue. Never a name that I'd mentioned. Never a name that Fiona would have twigged to if I was sending her cryptic messages one night. But Ivana Fuso, either of you want to put your hand up and admit to knowing anything about her? Okay.
I've done my research today. That's about it.
Yeah, and I was looking at some stuff, and now Torrance I'm just jumping. I know we're jumping back in, but there's a slight delay in when it's broadcast. So then, therefore, when the messages come through. So we talked about the foreign players. Jackie went back to England before the new rules, apparently, so she needs to quarantine. And then Shane says, much as I think we've all said, it's just what's now a yearly tradition of hiding Jackie from all the photos until late July. So that the admin of the account can go, oh, here's the pictures you've all been waiting for. And the Twitter meltdown ensues. So Ivana Fuso, I keep having to check a name there. Not a name any of us would have necessarily associated with coming to England, never mind United. Born in Brazil, played for the German youth team, captain of the German youth team. So we're not talking about somebody who is just on the fringes. Comes to us with a relatively decent reputation, obviously, within the German youth team, but not the out-and-out top world-class striker we would have anticipated. Are you disappointed or optimistic having signed her? I'm thinking disappointed in terms of not the top class striker we all wanted, or optimistic in terms of this is a clear signal from Casey. She's looking at youth. She's got a little bit of experience with Lucy Stan, but now she's brought in two players that we can both look at and think they're not going to be regulars this year. But again, 2 years and an option for another year. They're looking to go forwards. What are your thoughts? Mark saying he's optimistic. Shane's intrigued. What are you, Fiona?
It's a weird one. So very optimistic for the future. I don't expect her to get much game time the first half of the season, maybe the whole season. She's definitely a player for the future. But if you look to the men's team, we've got Mason, Marcus, and Anthony, all very young attacking players. So, those kind of positions, it's fine to, try out things with the youth. Things don't always work out, but attacking players when they're young, they're normally exciting. You wouldn't say that about a defender, but you can say that about an attacker. Yeah, she's had lots of experience in the German national team, the youth side. So she's the captain of the under-19s. But she hasn't had much first team experience in a quality league. So I think she only had 3 games in the Frauen Bundesliga, which is the women's team in Germany. And I wouldn't say the Swiss league is the greatest of quality. I've seen some of the matches and it does look like it's a college football pitch. So she'll first of all have to get used to LSV, and then she'll have to get used to us noisy lot in LSV, and then the game. But no, she's definitely something for the future. The clips I've seen, she's Seemed relatively quick, running onto a few through balls, scoring goals. So yeah, I can understand why Casey hasn't gone for that world class striker because we've had to pay a lot of money for Jane Ross. So you can kind of see why she might have gone for a young striker, but I'm still hoping that there's another striker signing coming at some point.
Okay. Torren said that she watched a game from the Under-17s World Cup from a couple of years ago today. Fuso was good, runs fast, much as John Fry said. Runs fast, works hard, and passes well. The kind of things you'd want in a player. Craney, what were your thoughts when it was announced, other than who?
Well, the first one was shock. I think shock and a bit of a gamble came to mind. But then, again, conversations with other people, I'm one of them. I don't know if sitting on the fence is the right word. Like, it's great looking for the future. And I'm not writing a signing off. However, we do also need, somebody that can come in and get the goals straight away. That said, again, the transfer window is still open. So, some of us might be thinking, well, where's this world-class striker? How do we know that there's not one on the way? So I think in that respect, I'm on the optimistic kind of fence with a few of, I think, it's going to be different to what we have again. Obviously, you can see from comments there, quick player, good at passing. I read something before. Somebody said, attacking midfielder, don't expect an out-and-out number 9.
Yeah.
Great. I think I've actually, it was a conversation with Nat. She noticed, and I don't know how she knew this, whether it was just by sheer luck. She was actually in Germany's qualifying Euro team.
Yeah.
So last year, obviously, there was games at St. George's, and she was top scorer for qualifying for Germany. She got 6 goals. Now, I'm not sure whether she made the team in Scotland. She might have been a travelling player last year. Certainly didn't play when England played her. But again, I think looking forward, what's she, 19 years old, I think, coming into a new league, as has been mentioned. I think, it's got to be worth a go, hasn't it? Something different. She looks very skillful, very direct, quite strong as well. I think pace and power.
Already ready. Craney, she's ready.
She's ready. She's ready already, and she loves the song.
Love the song.
Perfect.
It's sorted.
Again, it's one of them like we touched on before. Where are we going to fit her in?
Right, that was going to be my next point.
Yeah. I mean, it's great now. We do have competition for places, and I totally agree. It is needed. But again, it's going to have to be quite a big rotation or a juggling job to kind of fit her in. I think there's been talk, hasn't there, that she can play a few positions. Some people have said, obviously, primarily attacking midfielder. Some people have said she can cover wide, which gives, obviously, Kirsty and Leah some competition. So I think, for me, exciting. From what I've heard, sounds good. And then all I'll say is, obviously, fingers crossed that somebody else, maybe another forward, comes in as well to complement what we have. And who knows? Let's see where we go.
Okay. Torren's putting her neck on the block here. She thinks Fuso will surprise us. Just wait. She'll be a fan favourite by next year. You heard it here first. In 12 months' time, Torren, you're on here, and we're going to remind you of that comment. And we're going to say, do you remember on the 15th of July at, what are we at, 7:45, when you said, oh, she'll be a fan favourite? We'll hold you to that one. Jake, quick question from Shane. I don't think Jake's actually been lucky enough to watch the women's Belarusian leagues, but maybe Jake could scout for Casey. See if there's anybody that we could bring in. I know he's been enjoying the men's Belarusian league. For me, I think there's an expectation that there's almost somebody else or something more coming in terms of we've thrown a lot of youth at this squad from day one. But we've now got a balance of youth and a little bit of experience. Oh, sorry, I've just got to say. Torren, you're right. We don't need to bring you back on in a year. Nat sorted it. She's already Nat's favourite. It's great.
Arguments already.
I
think that's what you get if you just like a tweet or a message of Nat.
I hope LJ's not watching.
Honestly.
Or Jess.
Nat's got too many
They won't be
favourites.
happy. I know.
Nat's got too many favourites. Jake won't watch the Belarusian women's teams. He doesn't want to replace United in his favour. Okay.
Can't blame him.
I think in this transfer window, I anticipated more experience. But I'm wondering whether Casey's feeling a little bit burnt by some of the players that were brought in last year with relatively big reputations and perhaps didn't perform as she expected. And actually, some of our star players last year were in our first year squad, our championship squad. People like Hayley Ladd came in and did a great job from the start. But you talked about Amy Turner, who was an absolute revelation last year. We thought she was done. And then she comes out and actually makes herself first choice right back. Millie Turner for me, and I know I've got a soft spot for Mill, but Millie Turner outshone Abby Mack pretty much most matches. And when it comes to Jane Ross, most of us wanted either LJ or Jess in the middle. Has Casey then, you think, completely thrown caution to the wind and said, you know what, can't rely on the British experience. I'm going foreign, I'm going young, I'm going hungry, and I'm just going for it. And is that partly as well the influence from the new number 2? Or is that all Casey, do you think, Fiona? There's a lot of that.
I can kind of see your point. Yeah, the players that have come in haven't performed to the fans' high expectations. You know, if we came in and we didn't know anything about them, we would have said they've all done a reasonable job, but you know, nothing like well, apart from Halad, nothing amazing.
Yeah.
So maybe she has gone down that route. I also think these are exciting young talents that, you know, have a lot of potential. Casey will be hoping to mold them into the kind of player she wants, where you're not going to necessarily be able to do that with somebody who's coming towards the end of their football career, somebody's a bit older. These young players, they can mold them, fit the team, that kind of thing. Yeah. I also think there's probably a cost. You know, Ivana's not going to cost. If we got her on a free, but she's also not going to cost us a lot of money compared to some of the world class names that were being thrown around. And until we have Champions League, it's unrealistic for us to sign them. But then there's also the cost of signing them. We're not at that stage yet where we can throw money around for fun. We have a lot more money than some of the teams in the WSL. But we can't just go out and buy 10 harders, for example.
Casey talks about this sustainability. So I'm just going to jump in because I'm being self-indulgent here. Okay. So Millie doesn't have to worry about her singing songs for new players now. Okay. Because some of us are loyal. Thanks, Shane. Yeah, I think Casey talks a lot about sustainability and making sure that this team isn't going to be a flash in the pan. Because it feels like this is a real sign of her saying, we're building now. We got to the championship. We held our own in the first season of the Super League. But now we're building again. This is Casey saying, right, let's get the next part of the project. Let's get that bit of experience. And let's not ignore that we've got some experience with Lucy Stan. But we've now got a bit of youth. And we've got a little bit of something different, something that people won't have seen before. So I get a different sense about these signings. Craney, where do you stand on it?
In the middle again. I mean, some of us had a chat yesterday on the group in terms of like you said, was Casey moving away from English talent? I think it can go one or two ways, Again, we touched earlier, about environment and how well they'll settle in. I think for me, I sometimes worry that are these players going to be given kind of the time? And by that, I mean by fans. Some people are going to, like you said, we're going to expect us now to kick on from last year. Obviously, we did have a very good season last year. I wouldn't have said there'd have been too many people. There might have been a few that said, we'll come fourth, we'll make another cup semi-final again. But I think going forward, like you said, a good mixture of youth and experience, fantastic. Whether we complete the move away from British players remains to be seen, but I think it's one of those where you kind of, the British ones that are proven, you know what you're going to get. Yeah. With these ones that we've brought in, not just this season, but last season, it can go one of two ways. Settling in, as we've seen with Lotta, can take a while. Whereas some have come in and hit the ground running. So for me, I think it'll be really interesting next year. I think, let's kick on. Let's see where it takes us, really. And again, like I said, hopefully if the, shall we call them, older, even though we've not got that much of an old squad, older or more experienced heads can bring these, younger players up to speed and standard, help them settle in. And then, there's no reason now with getting some more squad depth why we can't look to challenge, and kind of really push on in terms of this new season and obviously, like you said, the future.
Yeah, it feels like there's a slow shifting of slow changing of the old guard, and that I think we all accept that. Nat's saying this, young and hungry. That we know full well that the majority of the squad that won the championship for us in 2 or 3 years' time, there may be one or two. I suppose LJ is the one that stands out, but not everybody is going to be able to push us into that top 3 area, which we look at. So this is almost the next stage in the development, I suppose, that we've got to bring in the younger players. We've got to bring in somebody. We've got to bring in something different. And maybe, Nat says here, she's been burnt by the English, not just in terms of performance, potentially alluding to attitude there as well.
Yeah, I mean, it's an interesting one, isn't it, I think, because there was something before she said when they released the statement with Siobhan leaving, and they said, didn't they, she said it's my job now to take this squad and change it every year to the next level, which, like we've kind of touched on, it is a gradual process. This could be the next stage. But again, I link back to my earlier point. I just hope these players now are given time, especially the ones that haven't played in the league. It's going to be difficult. And obviously, as you two probably both know, fans have expectations, whether we agree or not. Everybody's kind of, got different opinions, which is fine, is where we want to go. Obviously we've got one eye in the future. Great. Obviously we're looking at the here and now as well. So I think for me, it's going to be interesting how we kind of balance this in terms of moving forward. But like you say, there's not going to be in 2 or 3 years time when we're hopefully, in my view and my kind of expectations, hopefully battling for the league and the Champions League. We're not going to have too many of those originals in there anymore, sadly. Yeah,
and Mark makes the point. Youth has always been the united way. Fiona, I know you were talking before about the men's the strikers. You got Rashford and Greenwood, who are homegrown, and much as Casey was saying, it's up to me to change that squad and to evolve it every year. That ruthless mentality. Fergie did it, and for those of us that were brought up watching United on Fergie's mentality, just because we'd won the league one year, you still then went out and strengthened. You didn't rest on your laurels. KCFC, and that's all for Casey at the moment. And it does seem, I know there's always going to be those rumours about the England job, but this is Casey laying down different foundations again. I'm just going to say it. Matt wants to get in on it. There you go. So, yeah, there's a different sense. You're both expecting more additions, Fiona?
I'm expecting a couple. We do still need a striker, maybe a bit more depth on the wings. But I wouldn't. I'm not expecting a world class player. It'd definitely be a bit more about the depth, I think.
Okay. Torren's saying if you're good enough, you're old enough. It's always been my way, yeah. Not me personally. Craney, you expecting anybody else coming in? You've mentioned two. Do you say 2 new players?
Well, two's what I'd like.
Okay. What positions are you looking at then?
I think for me, I'd agree with Fiona. Definitely another forward.
Yeah.
I know some of you are probably bored of me naming a certain young English lioness, but I think as well.
You can just name positions. It's fine if you don't want to bore as well, Craig.
Yeah, a forward definitely, and then I think somebody again to cover the wings. I think right wing or left wing, just to give kind of Leah and Kirsty that extra. What's the word? That extra challenge, I suppose. Again, coming down to competition at places, but I think. It's something she touched on, Casey, last year. Like we said before, she wanted numbers because we struggled with injuries. And I think, obviously, with departures now, obviously, Chamberlain this morning, I think are we still one, maybe two behind on last year's numbers. So I think for that reason, for me, there's got to be at least, I think, you'd assume two coming in, maybe
I've
three.
Lost count with all the keepers. I've lost count because the keepers last year, we ended up bringing keepers in, didn't quite get rid of keepers, had them injured. Or they got pregnant, and then how many do we need? And I've lost count because we've lost Shiv and Aurora, but actually we're down to 3 keepers. So is that right? I don't know where the numbers are with the keepers because they've been down for a while. I'm not asking for names. We're talking about incomings. You expecting anybody else to go, Rainey? I'm not going to name anybody, but
no, obviously not naming. I think
somebody's done that for us. I think somebody's been on Instagram and more or less indicated that there is somebody else leaving in a non too subtle way.
Yeah.
But are you expecting departures then?
I think yes. I think obviously. We talked about goalkeepers just then. I think what we are now 3. And a new development keeper that was on the pictures as well, training with the squad. So I think for me, maybe I'd like to hope we'd loan out a goalkeeper. I think just in terms of experience, obviously like we touched on at the very start of this, we don't know, ins and outs and names, etc. But I think I could see a goalkeeper going out on loan, and I could potentially see at least one more outfield player going as well. Whether we see a shock. One of the more, what should we say, established names going. I don't know, to make room. It all depends again on where we're looking to strengthen. But I think for me, I'd say definitely 2. I'd say 1 out on loan and 1 I would have thought permanently. Obviously, you mentioned from what we're reading into on Instagram, there might be a possibility of that, but who knows? We don't know, do we?
I'll do the Heppel on that one. Fiona, are you expecting any departures, either permanent or temporary?
I think it'd be good for one of the keepers to go out on loan, but then I do worry now about maybe it leave us a bit too thin. If we'd kept Aurora, would we have sent Rambo or Bentley out on loan to get some good experience? For the men, they like the keepers to go out on loan no matter what level to get experience. There's one outfield player I can see in my mind that would probably. They probably want to leave, maybe for game time or whatever. And I think in the women's game we don't see many transfers, so I don't think it's likely that we'll sell anybody. If an offer comes in that you can't beat, then maybe. But I think it's probably unlikely that we'll sell somebody. So maybe 1 or 2. But I'm hoping a bit more settled now.
Yeah, I expect that if we are going to get that information, it's going to be within the next week or so. And then we'll have another 5 weeks of nothing to talk about on the podcast again, Fiona. I think it's one of those, just keep an eye on some of the training pictures because they might indicate who is and who isn't. And I know we're always stalking's probably the wrong word. So players' socials to keep an idea of what people are up to and where they are and whether they're in the country, because for a long time we were waiting to know who was back, who was training, anything along those lines. So, okay. Mark said it's going to be really cryptic. She's taken it off Instagram. So maybe we were all wrong on that one. Sorry, Fiona.
I was just going to say we might also know. We might also know when they're coming into the country. We like to keep on top of that as well, don't we?
I mean, what kind of ridiculous situation would it be if you were just following random flights and not knowing which city somebody had left from? And even what city they were arriving in, assuming it's Manchester, but who knows? I think it's safe to say that some of the comments today from Shiv about us as a fan group highlight the difference between us and what she's been used to. So, the times when we do things like that, Fiona, I really understand what she's referring to. We've got to an hour, and we could have carried on, and I know we've kind of touched on subjects. Hopefully next week there'll be some new developments that we can talk about again. Craney, I'm going to ask you one quick question. I've asked Fiona this because Fiona's had the misfortune of being dragged into these far too often recently. Yeah. When we get back, and we're saying when, not if, because we're being positive, what's the one thing you're most looking forward to about getting back to a game?
Apart from watching it, being with you lot.
No, Craney.
Yeah. No, I think it's been, I don't know, obviously a strange situation. I think everybody's missed football, but I think just like touched on what Siobhan mentioned, I think just being with each other as a group, you kind of, the laughs, even, the differences of opinion, obviously, people agree and disagree, but I think it just makes us as a group, something to get up to and look forward to at the end of a week, isn't it? A weekend game.
Yeah, weekends just feel a bit empty and no
crazy.
definition. I know you and me, Matt, we're kind of coming up to a 6-week summer break of nothing.
We should have been planning. I don't want to. Sounds ungrateful, but I'm thinking, what am I going to do with my time? Because I can't go on holiday. So it's like bit of planning, and that's basically it. No football, no pre-season, and no holiday.
People are looking forward to chanting. Nat wants to see the fans. Then the players. Oh no, I don't know what order she's got. And then the game. The game's almost irrelevant. Craney, just a quick point to you. Mark's really glad you didn't go with that song.
Which one?
Right, we don't need to sing it. Anyway, if you were going to sing that, I was also going to ask Fiona if she'd premiere her Lucy Stan song. But I'll save that one for tomorrow night when you're on with that. Thank you both for joining me, and thank you to everybody who's been watching. Before I forget, next week we're probably going to be on about 8 o'clock. I think we're going to be delayed. The men are playing at 6 o'clock, so by the time that game's finished, we've got ourselves going. As I've said for the last few weeks, I have no idea who's going to be presenting it. I have no idea who's going to be on it, and I have no idea what they're going to be discussing. Hopefully, they're going to be discussing something about maybe incomings or something positive. But yeah, hopefully there's something that's happened in the last week that we can. Sorry, Fiona, I've landed you on it. So Matt's on tomorrow night on her own channel. Tune in because Fiona's going to debut her new song. Or maybe not. She'll never come on here again, will she? Thank you both very much. I really, really enjoyed this. It's been great to actually have something to get our teeth stuck into. Thank you to everyone for joining us. And someone will see you next week. Thanks very much. Bye-bye.